DVS1, my good friend Zach, and we are very honored. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight.
No problem, man. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's a real honor for these wonderful people to get a little glimpse into the life of someone who's doing big things with this. So
cool. Appreciate it.
We're super pumped. Yeah. So you guys, I just wanted to again reiterate, we're going to keep this really kind of casual and free-flowing and very organic. A lot of these folks know what you do, but I thought it'd be kind of cool to just talk a little bit about, just in brief terms, your journey getting to this point. I know you've been playing music and curating events for a very long time. Was there anything that you felt was a catalyst that brought you into this current state?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say I'm not young. I'm going to turn 40 this year. So I'd say the biggest thing was that I never knew I'd be doing this at the level that I'm doing it. I never shot for that. I never had that goal in mind. I was perfectly happy just kind of building something and doing something here and just becoming good at what I did. And I think when you have pure intention to do what you love, you just become good at it over time. Yeah. And so I think it's just like a domino effect. I started going to parties. I was enamored by the DJ. I watched the DJ as well as danced, but I was the guy kind of at the edge of the sound system dancing, but also like watching and paying attention and seeing the power of what you could do with an EQ or what you could do with just like even a simple kick drum on a big sound system and what that invoked in people. I was drawn to that. So I just kind of chased that, and little by little that led me to throwing parties, that led me to DJing, that led me to buy records. It just kind of kept going, and my personal natural progression came from, you know, dancing, DJing, throwing parties, learning about sound systems because I was enamored by big sound systems, to throwing big parties, throwing small ones, kind of legal, a lot of illegal, and then in the end, opening a club, shutting that down, and then the short version of how I got to where I am now is that when I shut down the club, I ultimately took some time for myself and started releasing and producing more music, which unfortunately in this day and age, a lot of people find it hard to break through unless they produce. Right. And as much as I'll always tell people I'm a DJ first, I'm not a producer, but I've learned enough to produce that I got a couple records out there. It opened up a bunch of doors, but I came through those doors with my experience as a DJ, and then that's what kept me there. You know, I mean, there's a lot of producers, I think, who can market themselves, who can set themselves up, but in the end, if they don't know how to perform, in the end, I mean, it's going to sound cheesy, but the saying is a DJ saved my life. I mean, it's ultimately how do you come out and perform and be a good DJ at that point, because you have those tools in front of you. Unless you want to be a live act, you have to learn how to play music.
Absolutely. Those are really good points. Does this all resonate with things you've talked about already, guys? A lot of familiar things that we're hearing right off the bat here, and so, you know, I love what you said about the purity and the love for it.
Yeah.
I think that really makes a big difference. You know, when we're talking about this, you guys are all here because you love the idea of this and you love doing this, and being a performer is very different than just, you know, wanting to be a fan of the music.
I mean, we had this talk when we talked about coming here tonight. Was I see it as art versus entertainment. They're both okay, but they're totally different things. And so if you have the goal in mind of being an entertainer, then maybe there's absolutely no problem with seeing that goal and chasing it. If you have the goal of being an artist, then I think it's a different procedure and a different process to get there. You just have to love what you do and keep doing it and trust in the fact that there'll be enough people to vibe with you on whatever it is you do. Absolutely. That you'll get there by that, you know, through a different route.
Yeah.
So they're both fine. You just have to somehow find a way to define which one you're chasing.
And I love that. And you know, that's really, I hope that's inspiring and encouraging to you guys, because it is for me too. I had a very similar journey where I kind of came through DJing and decided to start making music as well. And part of what I learned about DJing was exactly what you said, was just watching and learning that way. Is there anything that you would impart upon everyone here in terms of the best way to learn, other than, of course, getting hands-on and being here and having someone show them, but anything that you would say that's like, here's a really good thing to do to keep up with it?
I mean, as much as I'd like to come up with a way that you don't know, I mean, so I don't know how many of you will know somebody named Jeff Mills, but Jeff Mills for me in techno is like, he's the king. He's God to me in DJing, in what I do in my genre. And I had an opportunity to play with him on his 50th birthday. And he looked at me and he was saying how like he believes it takes 10 years to master anything, whether it be cooking, painting, playing music, whatever it might be. And he's been DJing now for, I don't know, 35 years probably, and he's mastered that. And in the last 10 years, he's tried to master another profession, which is writing film for music. And he's now at the point where he feels like he's a master at that. And so I just think it's just time. It's like the same way I say that I'm turning 40, my success didn't happen until my 30s. And it's not to say that it couldn't happen to me in my 20s, but I think I had a lot more time to master my art, master my craft, be more confident of what I like and who I am, and not worry about conforming to anybody. It's just like, in my 20s, I think as I was younger, I was in a phase where I wanted everyone to like what I liked, and I was worried about not conforming, but I wanted everyone to understand me. I think in my 30s, I stopped caring about that, and I just said, this is who I am, this is what I like. Yes. I'm gonna do me, and ultimately there's enough people out there that will feel that, hopefully. So I think it's just stay with it. Figure out whatever it is. It can change, it can manipulate, it can move, it can shift, but just stay with it. And over time, you're just gonna get good at it if you just keep doing it over and over and over and make mistakes and succeed at it. And honestly, throw yourself in. I mean, I've played opening sets, closing sets, empty rooms, full rooms, small rooms, big rooms, and each of those gave me a little more ability to work everywhere I was thrown into.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the end of those different time slots, we've talked a little bit about that in class. So when you're working as an opening DJ, can you speak a little bit on how you approach that versus playing a headlining slot, for example?
I mean, I definitely have a strong opinion on the role of everyone's position in the night. And I can give you an easy example, like a story. So I played this really big festival a long time ago outside of Amsterdam, and there was 2 rooms. The main room was like a 5,000 person room, all guests. The second room was a 1,000 person kind of local area. They didn't sell a lot of tickets. They moved the main room, or the second room headliner, into the main room to open. And it was 2 guys, 4 laptops, like they were ready to play this really tough set, but there was 50 people in the room for 5,000. And they were just playing like it was like there was 5,000 people in front of them. And I walked in and I looked around and I'm like, even though I'm known for what I'm known for, I'm gonna totally shift this and play appropriately for the amount of people in the room. I started at maybe 200 people in the room. I ended with maybe 2,000 people in the room, but I started really deep, worked my way up into what people maybe expected of me. And then later on in the night, this kid comes to me and he's like, but I thought you play techno. And I looked at him and I'm like, I play appropriate for what I'd want to hear if I was standing in that room. And he looked at me and he said, I believe if you want to be a headliner, you have to play like a headliner. And I stopped him and I said, no, man, that's absolutely wrong. I said, do you think that every headliner has only played that? I'm like, they started somewhere else and they had to learn, and that's how they got their respect, was that they were gifted and talented enough to understand their position in the night and be able to adjust accordingly. And I just think, especially in Minneapolis, it's really hard because we have early club times. We close at 2 a.m. DJ slots are sometimes only an hour long or even shorter. And everyone wants to show because they feel like that's their moment to shine. And they're like, okay, I just got to show you what I'm about. But I actually think the people that they're trying to impress, who maybe will give them other opportunity, will be much more impressed if they actually adjust and do what is, I think, more appropriate. And there's no definition of what that appropriate is. It's just what you think is right in that moment. Mm-hmm. And I think actually you'll stand out more if you don't necessarily just throw everything on the table and actually hold back enough to set the next guy up or play out of where the last guy left you. Right. I just think there's an art to that, and I think it's getting lost a little bit now, because if I did this interview maybe like a month ago about playing long sets. I mean, the longest set I ever played was 12 hours. And
how about that, you guys?
and I mean, the thing is like you have to have depth to be able to do that. And I think doing all those positions gives you that depth and gives you that ability. And you know, I said in that interview that like if all we raise is a bunch of peak time DJs, you're wearing out the crowd, you're wearing out yourself, and you're not really diving deeper. So I just think everyone's got to take that responsibility once you get to that level, to kind of take your responsibility of where you are in the venue, in the room, in the people, whatever, and just kind of be appropriate, I think.
It's a big part of it, you know, and that's something we've talked a lot about too, is exactly those concepts. So in terms of building your music collection then, to be able to play appropriately, how do you approach that end of it? I mean, I know
I got a lot of music. I got a lot of music.
Yeah.
I mean, I like everything. I was lucky enough, I think, to get raised in events that showcased all kinds of music. Now things are a lot more genre specific. Like, people do nights that are only this genre or only that genre. But I grew up with, like, as a techno guy, I grew up on house. I grew up on disco. I grew up on soul and funk and hip hop and all these things. So they were all elements in my taste in techno, and the things that like made me nod my head were elements that I heard in other genres that I liked. And I just think I wasn't scared to put those together and just kind of draw that, because we're not all running at 100 miles an hour all the time. I mean, sometimes we're listening to something a little deeper, a little heavier, a little more emotional. And I just think the opportunities, like even now, I'm booked as a headliner, but I value the times I get booked to open a room, or I get to play an all-night set, because I get to pull the deeper stuff that I don't play as a headliner and play that at 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. when the doors open. And yeah, I just think it's important just to dive deep in whatever you're into, whatever genres you like, whatever things influence you. And like I remember when Vital Vinyl, when the record store was open, and people would go in there and they're like, I remember Mike kind of set the store up with very, you know, in the past genres were simple. They were, let's say, in a techno shop, it was house, techno, trance, drum and bass. That was your genres. And then people started creating subgenres. But then you get stuck in this thing where a kid would come in and he would say, I play hard house or something. And they would point to this little section that was that big, and he would never look outside of it. And I just think it was important. I grew up when it was a simpler setup. So a techno guy would go dig in house. He would go dig in this genre, in that genre, because it would just be whatever caught your ear, and you weren't stuck to that, I only play this little pocket of music.
Right, yeah, and I think that's really important, you know, is to be diverse in that. I have a follow-up question for you. In terms of now not having as many record stores, but vinyl's taking a position to resurgence again.
Sure.
What do we do then on the digital end of things? How do you shop as, in that virtual world as if it were that old record store environment?
I mean, so yes, so okay, like, I mean, I come from a vinyl past. I totally get that now it's not as simple for somebody coming up today with cost of equipment, with cost of records, with finding records. On the reverse, it's actually not a bad time as well, because everyone's sold off their record collections, and you can find a lot of really cheap house and techno and hip hop and everything in record stores used. You'd be shocked what you can find, actually, and you kind of wonder who these people are that sold all these records off. But I mean, for me, it's just like, same thing. You guys, actually, in your generation, you have the advantage of something like YouTube that can take you to 18 other artists and places and labels and things that maybe I didn't have a chance to, because at the record store when I grew up, it was just, you just go to the record store and whatever was there, that was what you were put in front of. I wasn't even shopping online. And even now, I kind of stay offline because I'm traveling enough that I am able to hit international record stores every couple weeks. But let's say with online shopping, it's the same thing. Just like dive deeper, like, you know, open up another screen. Like if you find an artist on this label, maybe right click and open up that label in another window, and then go dig through that label. And then you find another artist on there and click on him, and you'll discover 8 other labels he was on. And I'm also really about, like, I get a lot of people when they hear me play, they write me and they're like, what was this track? And I never tell them what the track is, but I'll tell them either the label or the artist, because I want them to go discover everything else. Because it's too easy to just give somebody a track name and have them go steal it, download it, find it, buy it, whatever. But they can get it, and then they don't discover anything else. So I just think it's important to kind of, you know, whatever door opens when you open up this one, follow a couple more and go deeper down the rabbit hole and just kind of keep digging.
Love it.
I mean, this is a digging culture. Our job as DJs is to find music and not necessarily to worry about, I mean, we had this discussion the other day, not even to necessarily worry about what's current. There's so much music that's timeless. It doesn't have to be old. It could have been last week. It could have been a year. It could have been 20. But it's timeless, and it's relevant to you whenever you discover it. It doesn't need to be relevant to the world today, especially in the life of a DJ, unless you're a DJ on the level of like radio or entertainment style, but if I'm speaking from, I think, the artistic side of it, there's no time limit to music. It's just if you find it, you like it, keep digging for it. I mean, I discover records in my collection even now that I've had for 20 years that I just didn't know existed, or I maybe only played that side and now I flipped it and I got the other side. And maybe the other side now matches with my taste today where it didn't then.
I found that a lot too, actually, digging through old
Yeah.
records like that. And when we were talking about this the other day too, you know, we've had this similar conversation about digging deeper and staying away from the top 10, top 100 tracks, right?
Yeah.
And you know, when we were talking about it, there's a lot of people that really feel that they got to play the tracks that were out this week or the last couple of weeks. Maybe reiterate a couple of the words we talked about. Yeah.
I mean, like at the level I'm at, like I actually got a taste of it because for a little while I got a chance to work for Derek May, another techno guy, icon from Detroit, and for about 6 months, I helped him deal with promos, and I didn't really understand how bad the promo world was. And man, he was getting like thousands a week, and I was helping him filter through what was not worth his time, what was. And then suddenly, after I set him up with his little system, then things kind of started exploding for me. I started getting promos, and it's crazy how out of hand it is. Where on one, at the beginning, maybe it made a big impact on people, but now it's so flooded that DJs just get hundreds of promos a day sometimes. And a lot of them, I hate to say it, have also gotten lazy and they live off those promos. And as much as maybe you're playing this upfront, first music, whatever, but every other DJ in your colleagues are all playing the same promos. So even more so, I treat it like, I'll get to it whenever. It just goes into a folder. When I feel like checking it, I'll check it. I'm not worried about playing what's relevant today because I'm worried about playing timeless music. So it's just go dig through, and whatever touches you, you're gonna make it yours. So you don't worry about who else is playing it or if it's charted somewhere or if it's the top track. I think that's a short-lived hype. And
people get burned out on it, don't they?
And it's like the idea that, and I get it. It's like, let's say you see a band that you really like and you want them to play all the greatest hits that you know them by. But in reality, how amazing would it be if they could blow your mind with music you've never heard? And that's the same thing I think for a DJ. I get sometimes kids come up to me with their cell phone and they're holding it to me like requesting that I play this track that I made. And I'm like, no. And why? I'm like, because I want you to hear something else that I play that you're like, what is this? And just freak out. Because I remember those moments when I freaked out and was like chasing 10 years down the line. I maybe was in a record store, dropped the needle on a record and was like, oh my God, that's the track that guy played 10 years ago when I freaked out. So there's something about shocking people and surprising people, and I think that's our job.
Absolutely, and those are the rewarding moments too.
Absolutely.
When you come across something like that, and it is that gem that you've been looking for and hunting for. That's part of the reward that we get from going down that path and digging and trying to find.
And that's what I think about, like the hunting. Let's say spread it into a digital world with YouTube, with all the connections you can make with record stores. I mean, also, let's say you only play digital music, don't only shop for digital music on digital music websites. Go look at vinyl websites. Because half of that music, I'll be really honest, go steal it if you have to. I really don't care. The reality is that it's going to spread your wealth of knowledge because there's a lot of labels that don't want to release digitally, or they don't release on the major websites. They don't release on Beatport or iTunes. Like I run 2 labels and I don't release anywhere except for Bandcamp digitally. I only stay on Bandcamp. We do it independently, and we sell a lot on there because I just kind of leave these links everywhere, and we have this thing about if somebody buys our record and send us a picture with them holding the record, we send them some digital links to get it for free. Awesome. And we just have this kind of thing about so I would definitely suggest whether you play digital or vinyl, it doesn't matter, but use all the resources you have. Like go shop on a vinyl shop and just make notes. Make an Excel sheet somewhere with all the tracks you're finding. And then if you can buy them, fine. If you can't, take them. I don't really care. I just think it's more important that you discover new music. And
Yeah, I think that's
any way you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in terms of now coming out of a local scene and broadening into the rest of it, I know a lot of our collective group in this room is looking for perhaps that next step to take. But
Sure.
there's not always a lot of glamour behind it, and I'd like
No.
to maybe address a little bit of that with them. You know, some of the trials and tribulations that come with it.
I think, especially in Minneapolis, at least from my experience, to get somewhere you had to become a jack of all trades here. Like you kind of had to. There was obviously maybe some promoters that you could come to try to get a gig or to go to their shows or to offer help to them. But a lot of the times we had to do our shows to get ourselves a chance to play. So we had to come up with a production company, a theme, an idea, a vision, and then we had to push it. And in the process, we were able to push ourselves and our crew or our friends or our people, and that all kind of spread. And I think that was interesting in our scene because everyone. The kids who just came up and expected something, we were like, no, because these 5 guys worked really hard to help us put this together, so they're the ones who are going to get in. And I just think that you almost, at least in our city, to take the next step, I think you either got to, do a little research, like find maybe a little venue. I mean, start small even. Find a little venue that doesn't have anything going on and see if you can get 50 or 100 people to start coming out on a monthly basis and listen to you and a couple of your friends play, and that'll spread. I mean, you'll gain a little more confidence, you'll gain some more experience. It's don't just rely on everybody else to give you the chance. I think you just have to make your own sometimes.
Yes.
Absolutely. And it sucks here. We don't have not in everything. It sucks here that we don't have a lot of club options. We don't have a lot of venue options. We don't have a lot of legal options here that are conducive to like a proper club culture. Great. We just don't have it. We close at 2 a.m. People don't even come out until midnight, and they spend their time, drinking and socializing, and they don't really hear the music. So build your own. I mean, build your own thing. If you're not happy with what you see out there, then create your own and just ask a couple people who you trust to give you some guidelines of how to do it. And then just do it your way and make it yours. And in the end, you'll either fall or you'll succeed, but you'll learn something either way.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with tripping and falling. That's how we learn the best.
Yeah.
We've all experienced that in our beat matching boot camp, right?
Yeah.
And it's you got to do it over and over again. You have to stumble. So to juxtapose the kind of scene that we have here versus what you see in the rest of the world, maybe speak a little bit about that, about the differences. So we close at 2, other clubs are open till 1. Right? That's
so I mean, the place where I played like a 12-hour set, I have a residency at this club called Berghain, and in techno at the moment, it's kind of the mecca for what I do. And they open Saturday night at midnight. They don't close till Monday morning. There's for 15 euros or $20 or so, you can see 20 headliners. I mean, from the moment they open to the moment they close in 2 rooms, every artist is a headliner, where in any other city they could lead their own party solo. Right. They're one of 16 people that night. And the shortest DJ set in that club is 4 hours. The maximum is the closer, and the closer has an open-ended closing. And what I really love about that, especially as somebody who's like an adventure DJ, which I think I could consider myself as, is like here you're watching your clock and you're like, I got 5 minutes or I got 10 minutes. The bartender's already flipping the lights. Yep. There they come to you and they say, how do you feel about 2 more hours? Maybe 3? And you look out and you're like, yeah, I can handle another 2 or 3. And it just leaves you this really weird creative opening to just kind of go with it and just trust in yourself and let go and just do it. And I think that breeds a deeper artist as well, because you just don't have that restriction. Musically, time-wise, there's no, like there's been times there, like I probably do, when I started playing there, I played a lot of closings. Now I play maybe 1 or 2 a year. And like May 1st, I'm gonna do a closing set there. So I'm prepared for 8 hours. It could be 10, it could be 12. And you just don't even look at your clock. Like you set it off, and to me, I know it's a good night when I don't even look, and the first time I look, it's already been like 7 hours. Great. And I didn't even know I could do that. The first time I played there, I played 4 hours, and the next time was 6, then it was 8, then it was 12. And I didn't even know I was capable of that, because here I never had that chance. The longest I'd ever played in Minneapolis, or at that time, was 4 hours. And I was like, okay, wow, that was a push. But then to be put in that situation and do it challenged me to how I think about music even the last 6, 7 years, because now I think about it almost even a little different. Like I look forward to doing that a few times a year and like really pushing myself and pushing my boundaries and pushing the people in the room's boundaries, because you can't stay here for 12 hours. You have to go like this. You have to have something to say. And it's fun as a DJ because it comes to the point where you're going through your music, you see a track and you can't get to it quite yet. But then it's like, how do I get there? And that's where the adventure comes in. You know, it's like, how do I find my way to that track that I really want to play?
That's such a beautiful way to describe it. And you kind of started answering my next question, which is when you're in that position and you're reading the crowd, you know, and you're kind of going through this adventure.
Sure.
How do you make your decisions on, you know, when to bring the energy level up or down?
Well, this is the weird thing. I think you have to have empathy to be a good DJ. You have to, like, there's some DJs who look out at the crowd, have antics, jump around, they do their thing. That's not what I do. Like, for me, I put my head down. I'm always working. I'm working on 2-3 decks at a time. And I always said to people, like, if you see me standing back and going like this or whatever, you know, then I'm not working. And so I'm always working. And but I'm empathetic to the crowd. I don't need to constantly be looking at them. I just feel something. Like, I just have this feeling of like, okay, they're getting bored, or oh, I gotta go left, I gotta go right, I gotta throw them a curveball. And also at times, I think this is the same art versus entertainment. When it's entertainment, the crowd expects something and you feel this pressure to deliver. When it's art, it's like you go to an art show, you look on the wall, and maybe you're not feeling that painting, so you go to the next one, maybe you're not, well, that one's pretty cool. And then you look at that one for a while, or maybe you think a little deeper. And if you're really not feeling it, you just leave the room and go to the next one. And so I think if you're approaching it from the artistic perspective, there's also this give and take. The crowd is there to see what you do. So you don't have to always worry about that. Like, just go for your own adventure and just ride it and just see what happens. And like, for me, the music I play is really simple. It's stripped down, it's beats and rhythms. So for me, it's emotion. It's like, if I'm feeling good, you're gonna get this happy kind of upbeat vibe. If I'm feeling, I don't know, darker, it's gonna be a little darker vibe, but that's the art of it. It's just, I don't wanna repeat my show every time I do it. So I'm approaching it from a perspective of like, in my folders, and we'll talk about that later with Recordbox, or my record bag, when I separate my record box at a show, like, I got deeper cuts, next level cuts, you know, I've got really heavy stuff, I've got like some acid and electro and like kind of offbeat stuff, and my record box folders are organized the same way. It's by atmosphere. It's like by deep, deeper, classics, electro, this, that, whatever. And at any point, I just go to a mood, and then I just find something in that mood, or find a color and just start painting, and you just do it that way.
I love it. I love that you just used the analogy of painting and colors.
Yeah.
We discussed that last week or the week before even. You know,
Yeah.
You know, you have this artist palette, and
I mean, and don't get me wrong, it doesn't always work.
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
and that's the thing. Like, I've met some DJs along the way that are like, yeah, I've booked a couple people when I was booking things, and they'd be like, well, what kind of set do you want? Because, you know, I've got like 3 sets I'm playing right now. And I was like, what do you mean you have 3 sets? Like, well, there's like 3 sets I've designed that I'm playing right now. Right or wrong, it ain't my thing, because I feel like you have to be able to just take the adventure that night. And it may work, it may not, but it's so much more fulfilling on the nights that it works. And as long as, for me, as I have a balance of good gigs to bad, I'll keep going. And right now the good ones still outweigh the ones that it didn't work. But I'd rather go that way. So that's the way I fight. I kind of go on the adventure.
And you got to take some of your own risks. And,
Yeah.
and at the same time, you're challenging your audience, right? And that's where you get that.
Absolutely. And that's also the thing, like, let's say, to go back to the European audience maybe versus the US one, the one thing I've noticed too is, and it's even more magnified at Berghain where I have the residency, a lot of places, if you make one left turn mistake, you feel like you lost some people. Let's say in most of Europe, I can take 2 or 3 left turns and not lose people. At Berghain, you can go 20 minutes to the left and not lose anyone, because they're really there to watch you. They're really there for the adventure, and they're really willing to let you take the risk. And that makes you, I think, better as well, because when you're always under the pressure of, if I do one thing wrong, I'm going to lose everyone, then you're just not taking the risk.
Yeah, it's hard when you don't have a situation that's a little more forgiving.
Yeah, and I get that. And so, I mean, I'm in a unique position having that freedom at the level that I'm doing it. And I think a lot of guys lose that freedom in their head, or maybe they let themselves get booked at places that take away that freedom from them with the crowd or the vibe or the atmosphere. But I'm very conscious of it, so I'm trying to keep myself in those environments, because otherwise this isn't going to be fun anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And so a question just came up in my head here.
She's got one.
Oh, you got one, Rachel? Please. Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious about like preparation versus spontaneity.
Yeah.
And if you're going to be taking it as an adventure, what does preparation for that look like?
So on the short version of it would be no, I mean, like there's like a process that I do weekly. There's a process I do monthly. There's probably a process I do every 6 or 7 months when I get fed up with everything. The weekly process is just I'm always shopping. I'm always looking. I'm always digging through my own collections, or I'm always at the record store. I'm looking online, or I'm listening to promo. So it's just a regular process of like daily. I'm going through music, old or new. It doesn't matter. Because even if it's old, it could be new in that I'm going to play it. The next version of that is maybe I have long-term projects in my collection, like really going through a little deeper in these folders and being like, you know, I don't need to play this stuff anymore. And just like eliminate it from that color palette that you're using and be like, I don't have it anymore. So let's say I bring, unless it's a long set, like most gigs I travel to, I have 100 records on me. And then I have a USB stick with maybe 500 tracks on it. And then I have another USB stick with like 1,000 more tracks on it. But it's like way more, not what I was necessarily booked for, but like I hate to loosely use this as like if I end up at an after party, or if I end up playing even earlier into the morning, I've got like the real deep stuff on this one stick that I'll just pull out that I, you know, normally wouldn't have that record bag with me, so I just bring it there. So yeah, it's more just a continuous process of digging and then trying to minimize it, because limitation is also good. If I come with too much, I get overwhelmed. I mean, when I used to only play records before I was traveling, I mean, I would show up with like 2 crates and I'd be playing 1 hour. And I was like, what am I doing? You know, because I just couldn't limit myself. And now because of traveling, I have to limit myself. And in a way, it's good. You know, and sometimes, I mean, honestly, I don't know half the music I'm playing in detail all the time. I just trust myself that it's in the right folder, it's in the right place, it's got the right vibe that I'm going for, and I'm able to manipulate it in the moment. It could go wrong, but I'm kind of holding it together, or if I don't like it once I hear it, suddenly I can kind of mix out. But I trust myself that it's already gone through a process of me listening to it a few times to know that that's a deeper track. This is a harder track. This is kind of there. There's something about it I like. But if it doesn't get played a lot, then after a while it'll get pulled out of there. It'll get out of my way, it'll get replaced by something else.
Anybody else have a question for Zach before I move forward? Keep it organic, I like this. So, don't all jump at once. So as I was gonna say, you know, and in thinking about this, when you are kind of considering organization and things of your tracks, this is something we've talked about. And I really like that everybody can take their own method of organization. And what I've said, and I'm curious, because I feel like it kind of echoes what you were saying, is that find a way that your mind works for.
Yeah. Don't worry about how everyone else does it. Like, I mean, you can look for tips and tricks and tutorials and all these things, but if you find a better way to do it the way you do it. Mm-hmm. Like, I organize my digital music in a digital way similar to how I organize my vinyl. Like, I have 3 levels of vinyl selection in my life. I have the back shelves that are like back stock. I have when I got time, I'll dig through them, and then all the records on the floor are what I'm playing currently, and those are the quick ones that I go through all the time. And I have my digital life set up the same way. I have like the back stock, the reduction folder, and then I have the dig through now folders. And then they're all separated for me by, you know, by feeling, by emotion, by feeling, and then that's how they get sub-separated. And then let's say I have a gig this weekend where I really want to fine-tune it a little bit. Maybe I'll grab the most current folders, call them the same thing but by city. I'll be like New York City Deep, New York City Techno, New York City this. And then I'll even try to limit myself more because, again, I feel the limitation helps me at the moment, not sitting there going like, where's that track? What am I trying to play? I can just kind of find things and move and keep going.
Yeah, and so, you know, as you're kind of going through that, one of the things that just came to mind to me too is as you're talking about this process of limiting yourself and filtering things out, there's also a level of consistency, whether it's vinyl or digital. And maintaining that consistency, I would imagine, makes it easy with such a vast collection to still provide those limitations if you know exactly kind of how you're setting things up and where to go. You know?
I mean, I'm always questioning if there's a better way, but that's just process, and that's why I mean, like, you just got to keep at whatever you're doing and whatever it takes, and don't be scared if you do find a better way to do it. Don't be scared of changing all your whole setup to work for the new way you've decided to go. Like, we all get stuck in our ways and don't want to change our habits, but you know, if you find something that works better for you, by all means, try it, do it, experiment with it. Just save a copy of whatever you're changing so you don't screw it up, you know, and that's it.
So on that, what about safety nets? You know, redundancy in any ways. Is there anything that you've run across where you're like, man, I gotta have this just in case?
I mean, like, I do that with a lot of old records. I rip a lot of old records that I have in my collection that are too rare to be bringing out on the road. With digital stuff, files, music, production, anything. I mean, I've got a Dropbox backup because I actually created that today as we talked. I have 2 studio computers, one in Berlin and one here because I have a place that I live in Germany. And the hardest part for me was I was always traveling with a hard drive. So actually, as of this morning, after 4 or 5 attempts of trying to find the right way to do it, I finally decided on putting my studio computer onto Dropbox, letting it copy onto that studio computer so that no matter where I am, I don't need the hard drive. They'll be matched up. And then I even have a 3rd hard drive in my place that's wireless, that's backing up my laptop and both of my studio machines constantly. So it's just a 2 terabyte drive that's just always copying.
Love it. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't have that for a long time, and I probably lost a few drives and freaked out and panicked. And that's the scary thing with records, I worry about a fire, but if it happens, it happens. With digital, I always beat myself up that I didn't have backups of anything. And I just finally crossed that line where I needed to have backups of everything.
Sometimes we got to learn lessons the harder way.
Exactly,
you know?
exactly.
Guys, do you have any questions for Zach before we kind of change things over? Clayton?
When you're touring, I know there's so much traveling that you're constantly tired. How do you get yourself in the zone to play that night after being on a plane for 12 hours?
Absolutely. It's taken me 6 years to find the right balance of how to travel and how to play. And that's why, like 4 years ago, I got an apartment in Berlin and I started staying there for longer periods. And personal life had me flying back here every couple weeks the last couple years. This year I'm changing it again, and I was off for 2 months here, and now I'm going back over for 2 months again next week. And I was just over for a month. I've always had a lot of energy. I mean, I'm that guy. I never drank coffee until 1.5 years ago, and I had more energy than most. I could stay up for 2-3 days. I don't drink. When I do gigs, like, I already just don't really drink, but like if I want to drink, I won't have one until the last night of a 4-gig run or a 3-gig run, because I can be exhausted, but the moment I get up and I feel energy of speakers pounding on me, I'm awake, I'm good, it doesn't matter. You know, I don't drink Red Bull, I don't drink it, but if you're hungover, honestly, it's going to be a struggle. If you're hungover from whatever it is, it's going to be a struggle. So I just think, at some point, too, there's like a line you have to cross at the level I'm doing it where you treat it, I mean, it's fun for me still, but it's also professional. Like, there's a lot of guys who still go to the after party, who go party with everyone. My job, honestly, is to create the experience for everyone in that moment I'm playing. My job is not to hang out with them afterwards and to party with them and everything else. The most important part I do is to show up and play well. So at some point, you almost have to separate yourself, too, and just be like, I got to be on my A game when I show up. And so I do. And it's funny, I used to get offended by DJs I would book when they were like, pick me up 30 minutes before I play and drop me off when I'm done. And I was like, you don't want to hang out with us? I get it now. I mean, I get it, because if you're honest, if you're really giving a part of yourself and you're not just entertaining, you're giving a part of your soul every night you play, and you only got so much of it. So to hang out with everyone sometimes is tough, because it's not that I mean, vampire is the wrong word, but they're sucking your energy. You know, it's like, I love to talk with people, and I'm social, and I love to be able to give them some talks and things, but like right after I play or right before I play, sometimes it's too much. And I get now why these artists were like, pick me up 30 minutes before, because you walk in, you look around, you kind of catch the vibe, and then you jump in and you do it, full of energy, and when you're done, you got nothing left. It's like, I need to go to the hotel for a couple hours, sleep, and then take off again, you know? So yeah.
It's a great question. What else, you guys? Wealth of knowledge here. Take advantage.
How about your hardware setup?
Actually, everything I've ever produced was in Reason. I use Reason for everything. I used to have an analog studio back in the day, but I've gone through 3 times in my life where I lost everything. And one of those times I had to sell off all my gear. So when Reason came out, I know you guys are all, most of the people at this school are going to be Ableton-based. I picked up Reason when it was in its first version. And I don't know if you know about Reason too much, but Reason is as close to the thought process and wiring process of analog gear in a digital world, because it's just racks of drum machines, samplers, and synths. So I used it the same way I used when I had regular gear. I just flipped things around, I experimented, I put cables places they shouldn't go, and I got sound out of it. And I was like, wow, this is cool. And same thing, there was no tutorials when I picked up Reason. Like, there was a few with the program, but there wasn't as many as there are now. So I just experimented, and a lot of my first tracks, like I didn't really understand CV and gate that well with gear, so I would reverse them, but I would get a really cool effect that way. And I kept using that in the future because it was something I found. And like we were talking the other day, I was asking if Leon knew anyone that could help me with a little deeper knowledge of Reason even. And as much as I do want a deeper knowledge, I also don't want too much to affect my experimentation, because my experimentation got me to the processes I know now. So yeah, I mean, like, I used to argue about vinyl versus digital, this versus that. I'm done arguing about all that. It's whatever works for you, just use it to its full potential. Don't stop at the presets. Don't stop at whatever it is. Like, go a little deeper into the rabbit hole and see what comes out, you know?
I love it. And then in terms of, you know, showing up at a club, you have a set of requirements in your rider that you'd like to see when you get there. So a lot of these guys are still in a process of deciding what they're going to take on for their gear to perform with.
The one opinion I will have about, so like I said, I stopped arguing about digital versus vinyl, but I will say that the moment CDJs got the technology that they have now, I've really told people to get the laptop out of the booth. In my opinion, the laptop is a distraction, not only to you, but it's putting a barrier between you and the crowd, because most people who are using laptops are also putting them right in front of themselves. And that's like you, the crowd. Total separation, you're staring at a screen, they're staring at a screen. And with vinyl, I had this vibe that I always loved when I saw the DJ turn around, dig through his records, pull one out and be like, and I got excited because I was like, oh, they found the cut. And then they were throwing, and then they'd be like, no, that's not it. And then they'd be, oh, that's it. And then you'd see them and they'd be all excited. And there was something that changed when that switched into computers, because it was just some guy kind of looking, click, and he moved. And I believe that now that the technology is there with CDJs, because it is there, the laptop can almost go back away, and whatever you're using, whether it be CDJs or vinyl, or even if you still are on a laptop, I'm not dogging you by any means, just look at the technology that's available, because it's really good now. I mean, I've looked at anyone who used Tractor or Serato before, and I was like, all the loop points, all the things you do, you can do that in a CDJ now. I mean, especially like, I don't know which ones these are the
900 Nexus, I think.
Sure. So like the 2000 Nexus, the ones that you're going to see in all the clubs, the screen is bigger, the functions are there, especially if you use Recordbox, the way you organize music, it's totally the same as you would in a digital, in Serato or Tractor. So minus the few onboard effect things that you have, but honestly, you could do that with the Pioneer mixer, you could do that with pedals, you can do that with a lot of things on the side. You just don't need the laptop. And I just think from my personal opinion, that will be the last thing I fight for, is to get the laptop out of the booth, because I just think it connects you more to the crowd to keep things just clean with everyone.
So if someone were to be using, let's say, Tractor, and put themselves on a piece of gear to actually get that laptop away from the booth and have a piece of gear that would still allow them to control it, that might still be a way to stay connected with the audience.
Absolutely.
In that.
Let's say there's some effects that you're connected to with Tractor that just will not go away. I mean, there's got to be a way to find an alternative, I think, for a way to use those effects, but maybe still like move the laptop out of your way so you're not looking at it. Exactly. You know, like the CDJs, maybe even try, instead of the vinyl interface, try the, I mean, and once again, it's going to be backwards saying this because I'm a vinyl guy saying, even if you're using the vinyl interface with Tractor, don't move to the CDJ. But I'm looking at the balance of, I want to get rid of the laptop, even if that sacrifices the fact that you're touching the record. Sure. I just think there's an alternative to everything you can do. if you're cued in one way. I mean, I'm probably almost going backwards on myself saying switch if this is something you do. I don't mean it that way. Do whatever you're comfortable with. But I think just realize that at some point your DJing will move out of your bedroom or out of your studio, and it'll move to a crowd place. And imagine what you like when you're looking at the DJ. Does it bother you sometimes if you just see the Apple logo between you and them? If it does, then maybe consider what you would want if you were standing on the other side.
Absolutely, and that is something we've talked about. So that's that's a huge.
I mean, I feel bad saying that one way is wrong versus the other. It's not. Every way is right. Just figure out what. Just don't forget that you're standing in the position of the DJ, but remember what it's like to also be in the crowd watching you.
Yeah, that's an important part. That empathy.
Yeah.
Right, with the crowd.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What other thoughts or questions, guys?
I have a question.
Go
Yes,
for it.
Sean.
I just wanted to know more about the future of Mistress and kind of the sound. And
Sure. One of my labels.
Yeah.
I love, I was just listening to, I think,
ASOC. Yeah.
ASOC, and like one of his B-sides the other day, like Sunrise, and I was like, this is not what I would expect on
One of my labels.
your label.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know,
The song's-
it's great.
It's great.
And what's funny is he wrote that track after I got him a gig. I'm sorry, he came to Panorama Bar in Bergheim for the first time just as a dancer to be there. I played downstairs, he was upstairs, and he went home after the weekend and wrote that track, and that was the last track that finished the whole EP. I was waiting for him to give me one more track, and then I heard that one, and I was like, that's the one. And he's like, I just wrote that after the weekend. I mean, the thing with Mistress, so what he's talking about is I have 2 record labels. One's called Hush. It's just my own music. I haven't released a lot because, once again, I'm not in a hurry to release anything. There's 3 releases. There's a 4th and 5th that are going to come out this year. I started another label, Mistress, because I found myself in a position to expose new artists. I mean, there's only been a few established people that have popped in. Like I had a various artist release, and I had a few guys that had already released, but most of the artists on the label were either their first release or maybe their second ever. And the idea of Mistress was, if I like it, I'm gonna put it out. I don't care, there's no restriction. With Hush, it's more pure techno, like what people know me for. But even if you go deeper into it, and I don't know if I've ever even talked about it in articles, but like if you go deeper in it, my logo for Hush is a girl going like this. Mistress was the idea of like, techno is my wife. It's my pure love. It's what I'm known for. It's my first love. Mistress is all the things I like on the side. Call it corny. But the thing is it fit really well, and it was like, there's no restrictions to Mistress. The first release I put out was This Kid Borrowed Identity, and it was house, and everyone was shocked, like, but you're a techno guy. I'm like, no, I'm a music guy. I just like music. And I was in a position to do it. And what's really amazing is Mistress sells more records than I sell of my own stuff. I mean, it sells way better. And it's actually amazing because these are unknown guys. And as much as people know the label's connected to me, we don't market the label. I don't do any DJ promo. I don't send anything out to anyone ahead of time unless they ask. If they maybe heard me play it and they're like, what was that track? I'll send it to them as a friend. But basically, good music just sells. And like the record stores that I work with and the distributor that I work with was like, listen, Zach, go back to the old school formula. No remixes, all original tracks. Get your money's worth. You got 3 to 4 original tracks. There's something on there for everyone. You give them quality for a fair price, and it's gonna sell. And so I don't pay attention to like seasons when things are better to sell or not. I just put out music when I'm ready, and I trust that it's gonna sell, and it's worked. Yeah.
Awesome, great question. Brian.
Hope that answers it.
Yeah.
What are some things you kind of look for when you watch another DJ perform that you say, wow, that guy's good, or I respect him?
Interesting. I mean, to just learn to beat match is the first step. And like, I mean, you can teach somebody that. Do they have the soul beyond that? For me, what impresses me personally, I play music differently than most. I'm playing the music, I'm not letting the music play, if that makes sense. Like, I'm constantly boxing when I'm playing. Like, 2, 3 things going, sometimes a loop here, sometimes a whole track there, sometimes 3 tracks going. So I'm constantly in the mix and I'm constantly working. So personally what impresses me is somebody who works. Like I want to see them working. I want to see them tuning things and not overdoing it. But like for me, I'll manipulate things. Like sometimes I'll just be like, oh, I'm just going to drop that hat. And then I'm like, oh no, I need that back. And I'm just like working and I'm finding it and I'm hearing it. And it's just from what I hear at the moment. So it's, to answer your question, for me, what impresses me personally is the DJs who work. It's easy to just stand back and let the music play. And there's nothing wrong with that. In certain genres, that's the way to play it. You just let it play. Like when I play house, for instance, I let the music play. I don't sit there and play over top of it all the time. But when I play techno, I'm boxing with it all the time. So I think somebody who works impresses me. Yeah.
Good one, Brian. Love it. Jose?
Your opinion about the sync button?
I think it should be erased. I think it should be turned off. The limitation of what you can do with your own hands builds your ability and your skill. And honestly, I'm going to really say it, CDJs, you can do so much without ever pushing that button. So don't push it. I mean, you can cheat. I mean, I've been tired a couple nights and I've looked at the BPM and been like, yeah, 134.2. Okay, done. So why even push the sync button? You could just look at it if you really want to cheat. I think the sync button is too easy. I think it takes away from the art side of it. If you want to be an entertainer and that's the easiest route for you, go for it. I'm not going to hate on you. But to me, then you lose the artistic side of it. You lose. And honestly, there's something about when I would be dancing and I would hear the tension of two beats syncing and falling out of sync. And there's like the power of phasing. And when suddenly, like I heard it this weekend when I was playing at a party I did. I would have three things going and suddenly I heard one thing move a little bit and as I slid it, the kick drum just became huge and it was just pow and it was super powerful. And that moment creates that tension, that builds it. And honestly, I loved being on the dance floor and hearing things go a little loose and then being like, can he get it? Can he get it? And then he would adjust and I was like, woo! You know, it's exciting. And to just hear everything perfect, it's really boring really quick, in my opinion.
I think that's also part of the respect thing that I have too,
Yeah.
is when I hear something run just a touch and,
Yeah,
and the speed at which someone grabs that back and brings it
Yeah,
back in. It's like,
mistakes don't bother me. It's what can you do with that? It's what can you do on the fly? I mean, I have records skip on me all the time when I'm playing because they're old, they're beat up, the sub was too high, and I don't even care anymore. To me, I don't freak out. I cue it, I trick it a little bit, I throw it back in. Or I just like manipulate the EQ to pull it back out. And I think people are even like shocked because for a minute they're like, you know, there's some kids who maybe are right away are like, oh, it wasn't perfect. But I think there's way more people who are like impressed that I don't just disappear and freak out and put my head down in shame. I'm like, whatever, it happens. It's vinyl. Accept it.
yeah, that's a big topic we've talked about too. Is how do you approach a mistake? You know?
It's like you just deal with it. You just deal with it, and then. I mean, there's been times where that mistake re-energized me almost because maybe I was just getting too tired up there or a little lazy. And then the moment it happened, I was like, all right, let's go. Let's do this. Come on, let me show them what I can do. And then it's like, all right, let's pull another record. Let's throw it, cue it in fast, and let's see, show them that I'm capable, that was just a little mistake. Didn't matter. And I think the people who are going to judge you on that are not worth your time. They're just not worth your time. I'm not trying to impress everyone. I'm trying to create an experience, and that's just part of it. And some of my favorite mixes were, like Jeff Mills, who, once again, I already mentioned before. I mean, he released this thing called Live at the Liquid Room in Tokyo, full of mistakes, full of skips, but there was something in the vibe of that night that he captured that became a legendary CD for him releasing a mix. And yeah, the mistakes didn't matter. It added to the whole vibe. You heard the crowd screaming through the needles on the turntable. I mean, I think that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a snapshot of that actual moment.
Look, life is not perfect.
Right.
So music can't be perfect either. It just can't be.
Yes.
It gets boring if it is.
Absolutely. We talk about that a lot in our production courses too. You know, you have to have some imperfection, especially if you're coming out of a digital world. You know.
I mean, like, so even to go back when you asked me about what I use for hardware with Reason, like I use Reason. I don't use mouse. I don't count bars. I just open everything up. I have MIDI controllers like a mixer. I open things up for 10 minutes. I press record and I just jam with the loop that I created and some adjustments on the fly, and I just kind of see what happens. The nice thing about the digital world in production for me was that if I threw in something I didn't like, I didn't stop recording. I just pulled it back out. Later I could go back and erase it or clean it up. But my process in doing the music was like, just go for it. Just go for it. Because there's something about pushing the boundaries and just trying. And you'll find different combinations. You'll find things that shouldn't work. Like I don't pay attention to, like nowadays when you buy digital music, a lot of times it tells you what key everything is in and all this. I don't know anything about that. I don't even understand how that works, honestly. Like, I find a knack for putting records together that should not by key work, should not by mood work. But that's my job, is to make them work, is to manipulate them into working.
I love that. See, that's a really great way to take this perspective, because we have talked about mixed in key because it's very important for certain genres.
Yes.
But I think also it is equally important to have the want and the ability to push those boundaries.
Yeah.
Again, take that on, you know, don't be afraid to do that. So that's another thing. When you're listening to your music, try playing tracks together and see what works, see what doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, I used to organize things sometimes in groups of 2, 3, 4, where I know a couple of records are at least going to go well together.
But also, like, most DJ tracks are already set up with, you know, a mixing amount of time at the beginning before synths come in, before sounds come in.
Right.
So why worry about what the key tells you to join together? Because maybe I'm going to let this one track work its way to the end, loop out at the end, and then loop out the next one at the beginning and mix them for a while, and then release them both. And then the next track comes in that would have, in the mix, sounded terrible. They maybe wouldn't have gone together in key, but I want to hear that track right now. And so there's always a way to do it. So I just don't think, don't stick to the rules. Sticking to the rules is going to get you in trouble.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What else, you guys? Right?
Is there kind of a setup like you mainly use? You said you have vinyl and stuff?
Yeah, so like my rider when I go, so I ask for, I use an Allen and Heath. Honestly, I actually love Pioneer and how it's set up, but sonically they don't sound as good. On big sound systems, I run into a lot of problems where when I was on a Pioneer and somebody was on an Allen and Heath before me, they would sound better. Sonically, they would sound better because the moment you push a Pioneer into the red, it distorts really bad, where an Allen and Heath can get pushed. So I have an Allen and Heath, 2 turntables, and then I request 3 CDJs set up in front of me. And the reason why I request 3 is because if the decks don't work at all, I need 3 things. The way I play is always on 3 things, whether it be 1 turntable, 2 CDJs, or 2 decks in 1. I need 3 things to work between, because sometimes I'm like playing hopscotch and I'm just moving around them. And so the 3 CDJs are there as a backup if the decks totally don't work. Otherwise, usually I'm just using 2 CDs and 2 turntables. And I set it up as a cockpit because when you're moving left to right, your ears start to get fatigued with like monitors, where when you're in the center, you get comfortable with the sound, you get used to it. So if everything is reachable from your position, then you're not constantly like wearing yourself out trying to hear something different on one side or the other. So I set everything up within reach of myself. And then I pull the monitors close, I tell them to turn off the lights, and I just try to be in my own world and just do my own thing.
I thought maybe what we do is fire up Recordbox, maybe talk a little bit on
organization of music and stuff.
Organization, a little bit of the technical end, because that's kind of where we started looking into last week, and we're kind of continuing on this week. So maybe look at that for a sec, and if you guys think of any other questions, ask.
Yeah.
Sound good?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
I mean, like, so just to give you a little background, like, so I use iTunes to organize all my digital music. At some point soon, I'm going to switch completely into Recordbox for it. I've met with the Pioneer guys a few times and they showed me some things. I'm using an older version of Recordbox because they actually told me not to upgrade until I hit the point where I'd want to completely be in the program. So I'm using a version that's older because I'm still syncing it over to iTunes, and it was just simple the way I used it. But it doesn't matter where you create the music, whether you create it in Recordbox or iTunes or even a third-party organizational. The biggest thing that I learned from somebody with Recordbox and with iTunes especially was tagging things so that I could find them later. And because I think of everything in mood and color, I could even go deeper in terms of like setting actual colors, because Recordbox allows you to create color palettes for tracks or for vibes. I haven't gotten there yet. But I have a big thing with artwork because I come from vinyl. So even when I was in CDs before the USB sticks as my digital alternative, I would literally burn 2 tracks and print artwork to go on that CD so that when you look through my CD book, it looked like record labels, because that was how I thought about things. So one of the important things that I really loved about Recordbox, which sold me on it, was that you can put artwork on any file type in Recordbox, because normally you can only put artwork on an MP3 or whatever, but now you can put artwork on a WAV, on a FLAC file, you can do anything. I'm sorry, FLAC art, you could have it. But now you can put artwork on anything. So the two bonuses for me was putting artwork on things. Sometimes I would just be bored, didn't want to listen to music, so I would look at what files didn't have artwork, do a quick search online, download the first picture I could find of the artwork or the label, just something for me to remember and associate it with. In terms of tagging, what I always did was in iTunes.
Just trying to get you a couple of little
Yeah.
tracks. I was explaining to Zach earlier this morning, I ended up having a little issue where I went in and I'd replaced an SSD drive on this computer and had a few permission problems. So I spent all day playing around with computers.
So let's say, so like for you, it's, let's say, genre. One thing that somebody taught me when I started, there's a DJ in Amsterdam called Benny Rodriguez who became a friend of mine, and he adapted the Recordbox stuff pretty early on. So he gave me some helpful hints. And one thing he was just like, okay, the way you organize, you're gonna like this. So I went through genres. In the older iTunes that I'm using, it still says like note or something else. I don't know what it is, but so I created by the way I think of things first. So like one track could have 3 or 4 tags, but I tried to limit myself to never more than 3, and as much as possible 1, maybe 2. So if it was first in my mind a techno track, it would get, I use the pound symbol. You don't have to, you could use it just with the word, but I put pound techno. And then if I was like, but it's also kind of deep, then I'd put comma, pound, deep. Or not even comma, I just do pound techno, pound deep. Yep. And then, let's say on the reverse, if I heard a track and it was deep to me first, that was the first word I thought of, then I would call it deep first. And then maybe it was kind of acidy, so I'd put acid in there. And then really quickly in that playlist or in the bigger world of my digital music, if I ever needed by that feeling, I just searched. And then I could sub-search again by adding another keyword. And as long as you organized it by that genre, it would go the right way. Like, so all the immediate deep acid tracks would be first. Then it would be anything with the word deep and acid in the genre. But the first priority would always pop up on top. So those would be the ones I would search first. So like if somebody wanted me to play an old school set, I could easily do the tag old school. And I could just immediately find. And then within old school, I've got a little subcategory as well of old school house, old school techno, old school break, old school this. Yeah. So it just gives me an easier way to dig, because just like my record shelf at home, you know, then it might be broken by artist or by label or by this. The digital world allows you to, you know, have that track in 80 different places, where in vinyl, it can only be in that one place on that one shelf, and you hope you remember it was there. So that was the bonus to me of the digital world and just how to organize it, and being able to put one track in multiple places, and or just having it tagged so I could find it multiple times. Yeah. And then once you bring it into Recordbox, obviously in Recordbox, you know, just playlists. Like one thing I started doing.
If you want to use my computer,
I mean, honestly, I'm on an old version.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, cool.
So yeah, don't even worry. Go ahead, you have a question.
Stay away from the new version. It deleted my 2000 songs.
Thank you. See? Honestly, I'm that guy who never upgrades anybody's technology until it's like 3 levels past it, because I don't trust it. I've had too many problems upgrading iPhones, computers, and everything else. I just don't care. Like once they tell me they're on like version 10, I'll go from version 8 to 9 then. You know, I don't ever upgrade to the first one.
There's a couple new features that only, I don't remember exactly what there's some of them that only work on the Nexus 2 models that just came out, and so that's why I got it, because I wanted to have those features.
Yeah.
And it just deleted my whole collection, every song in all of my playlists.
Did you have stuff backed up?
Yeah.
All right, good man.
Yeah.
Tractor just did that to me, actually.
Exactly.
And even though I've had stuff backed up, I still, every time I load it in and every time I shut it
I mean, I
down.
think even when I do move to Recordbox, I'm going to do a reverse backup into iTunes and keep iTunes just hidden somewhere and just let it keep all my playlists in there as well. But so the one thing that I start doing, like, so when I play a gig, I have a folder in my iTunes that just says like current play, and it's got all those subgenres. So let's say if I make a quick list to go into that, I put it in that folder, then I go to Recordbox, I bridge it to my iTunes so it's reading from there. And then I basically just always replace that folder. So like maybe I made 2 tracks got adjusted this week from last week. It's usually more, but let's say it's 2 or 3. When I copy it back into Recordbox from the bridge mode, it says, found an old folder under that name. Do you want to replace it? I'm like, yes, replace it. And then I see it analyzing a few new tracks. At the end of my gigs, at the end of the weekend, I'll throw my stick in and it'll say histories found. I always say yes, copy the histories. Then what I do is I take all those histories and I put them into one folder called like current playlist, whatever you might want to call it, that month. And what I realize, there's a lot of tracks I start playing that I've played a lot, because maybe I'll put a list in there and it'll say, you know, already found 50 of these tracks already in there, so skip it. But every so often, it just allows me the opportunity to go back, see what I played, see what I didn't play, and start to eliminate things that I don't play. Or maybe I played it that night and was like, I should never play this again. So I quickly go back, looked at that playlist, saw the history of it, and was like, oh yeah, that's the track. And then I go into iTunes, erase it, get rid of it, make it disappear so I don't ever touch it again.
Yeah.
But Recordbox just kind of allowed me to have a better organization, keep track, see what I played before, see what I'm playing now, see how many times I played it maybe. The other thing, I don't use it so much, but I'm starting to use it a little bit more, is there's a few tracks where I've built a couple loop points, where I've created a couple things to just jump quickly between things. But I've had a hard time jumping into it because I'm a guy on the fly, so I just try to do it on the fly, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, you know?
And for me, or as I listen to you, it seems like maybe it's kind of that cool bridge of not having to have a laptop in front of you.
Yeah.
You get to do your hands-on stuff, but you still get to access the power of organization when you get home.
Absolutely.
Or before you go to your gig.
I mean, I can sit, you know, I can't listen to records in my hotel room. I can't listen to records on the airplane, but I can go through all my digital music. I can test things out that I wrote in the studio. I can make edits. Yep. I can work on things and try them out immediately. And that is absolutely the benefit and bonus of digital music, where before I used to cut dub plates to try a new track. And then it was burning a CD. And I had, you know, a ton of CDs that were just written scribbles on them, like, tried this, you know, and now it's a lot easier. I have a little folder, I can throw it in there, it says Zach's new tracks, and they were maybe 3 tracks I tried to write this week, and I can test them out and in my head go back quickly and erase them and get them out of my way or do whatever I need. Yeah. So, I mean, there's an advantage to it, and I honestly believe that anything I would have needed to do with the laptop, I can do on the CD player now. I mean, from the perfect looping that it creates, I don't know if these do the same trick, but like, so you can open up, obviously, can you open up like the multiple loop on these where you can choose the loop, like
we were playing
a half or not?
Because this is
it's a different version.
Yeah, we actually have a 2000 here. We can plug in.
Well, there's just, I mean, I don't know how many of you are on CDs or on laptop, but like the one thing that I don't think this one has it.
Yeah, but I know exactly what you're talking about, where it's got.
So yeah, you've got like you've got a graph at the bottom to choose all your different amounts of loops, but also if you hold on to that first button, it creates a perfect 4-bar loop for you. So there's just so many things that are enough for me. I don't need more. I mean, like I said to somebody like with Tractor and Serato, and we said this yesterday, just because you can play 4 decks doesn't mean you should. And so that's why I think taking the sync button away and doing those things is important, because just because you can doesn't mean you should. And remember that, because sure, I could put 4 layers of things in, it would be a mess, but I could, and it would probably be too much. I mean, like, if you're looking at music that you're like, oh, this will work really good as just that first 4-bar loop of the track, but the rest of the track sucks, don't play it. There are way better tracks out there that will work for you in a lot more levels than just its first 4-bar loop. So don't, and that was, I think, a lot of DJs fell into this problem with digital music. They heard something, they were like, well, this can kind of work, or I only like that first 20%, but it's enough, I'll play it, I'll loop it. But man, there's so much other music out there that 95 or 100% of it you like. So don't waste your time on those tracks that are just this much. Find the tracks that are that much that you like, and then manipulate them in the ways you want, you know?
Yeah, I think that's really important to also help to find the sound that identifies you, and that's not to say that there's one particular sound, as we were talking about. You know, the artistry of it is to play music. It's not to pigeonhole yourself. Play music you like. But if you find music that is that 95, 100% of...
But just trust that if there's something you're holding on to for just 20% of it, honestly, get rid of it, because you trust that you'll find something that's way more connecting to you and it's right there, and that 20% track that you're holding on to is just taking up space and losing you to find your way to that other one. There's just so much music out there, there's no reason to compromise for a little bit of something. Keep going, you'll find something that you like way more.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's enough out there, man. There's plenty out there. I mean, I know a lot, and I don't know shit. Sorry to use that word, but I just don't know shit. There's so much music for me to discover, I'm almost scared to jump into other genres because I know how deep I'm already in my own genre. That, it's overwhelming, you know, in a good way.
And I think we probably feel that a lot, don't you? I mean, you know, there's so much out there. It is overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's this double-edged sword if we look at it. You know?
Yeah.
What else, you guys? Any thoughts, questions as we're kind of going through this stuff?
Yes.
When you look for tracks, do you only, like, for example, I only play tracks where the drop is different each drop. Like, if you make your song have the same drop twice, I won't play your song. Do you have similar do that? Or, like, because I don't want to hear the same thing for twice.
What genre of music do you play?
I play all bass music.
Okay, so in bass music, you're gonna have a lot of tracks that are built around that drop. For me, I look for tracks that are that don't change. I look for rhythmically repetitive tracks. Like, I look for repetition. I look for I want tracks that don't do anything. I want them to not have a breakdown. I want them to really not do too much because I want to create that moment. So like, yeah, I'm using it as a layer in the mix of stuff. I mean, of course it's going to do something, but like, same thing. A lot of like, let's say in techno, for instance, a lot of DJs forget, and a lot of producers forget that we're playing tracky music. We're not playing songs. We don't want songs, actually. Like, we don't want a forced breakdown every single track for what we do. So what I'm looking for is things that'll just like stay repetitive with just a slight bit of movement up and down. And to me, I'm just like, that's the color. That's what it is. And then in the moment, if I want a breakdown, I'll make one happen. I mean, I'll EQ things. I'll pull the mid out. I'll jack the high on this one. I'll raise the gain here. I have a little effects pedal sometimes I use for long sets, so I'll just affect that channel. And then I make my own breakdown. So in that sense, I'm really quick with record shopping, and sometimes I make mistakes with that too. Like, I'll put a needle on, I'm like, nope, yep, you know, and I know right away that I want it. Sometimes I do make mistakes because maybe I didn't catch that it had some huge breakdown that was way too epic for me and I didn't want it. I don't have rules. I mean, the only rules I have is if I feel it, cool, I'll take it. If I don't, peace. And I really sometimes get confused, but this is, I think, comes with your own maturity, is like for instance, there was a couple tracks a couple years ago that every one of my colleagues was playing. Every one of them was playing. And I heard them and I was like, this is garbage. Like, I don't like this. And I started questioning myself, like, am I supposed to like this? Am I missing something because everyone else in the room said that was cool? And I was like, no, I just don't like it. And I just have to trust myself that I don't like it and I'm not gonna play it, and I really don't care what they're all doing. Because ultimately, I hate to say it, but they all sounded the same playing that track, and I'm gonna be the guy who doesn't play it, and I'm okay with that, you know? So trust your own taste, like, and honestly, don't stick to your rules too hard. I mean, stick to them, but if the track is really good, but it just happens to have two identical breakdowns, honestly, if it's digital, make an edit of it. Make your personal version of it. Like, we were talking the other day, there's a DJ in the house scene called Danny Tenaglia, legend in New York. And Danny, any track that he decides to play out on a long-term level, he makes an edit of it. He adds a new kick drum behind everything. He maybe adds an ambience, or he adds a vocal underneath stuff. And it's amazing because you'll hear him play a track and you'll be like, and you think you know it, but you don't know it because he's added some little twist to it that made it his. So if you hear this amazing track and there just happens to be this one extra breakdown you don't like, open it up in a music editing program and just chop it. Get rid of it. Change it. Move it. Splice it. Be done with it. If you're on CDJs, set a new loop point that jumps right past it. You know, it's if 95% of the track is great, don't throw it away over that 5%. So don't get too hung up on your rule on that one.
Love it. All right.
How do you keep yourself calm when you screw up in front of 5,000 people?
Nothing you can do. I mean, if you lose it, you look more ridiculous if you lose it and freak out. You know, like, I've also taught myself. Obviously, I'm trying with with vinyl to start. I mean, I've taught myself also to learn. I start with the CDJs, and then when everything is comfortable, the monitors are where they need to be, everything's how I want it, then I'll try a record. Record works, cool, let's try the other one. Yep, it works, then I can relax, I let go, and I work with it. I bring needles, I'm good technically, so I know how to adjust weights. I know tricks with putting water bottles under turntables to stop feedback. But I've also learned at like a big festival, like a 5,000 person festival, if they don't have a good reputation for technical things working, then I have a festival set up that's just CD players. And I just know, and honestly with CD players, unless I press the wrong button, I'm not gonna screw it up. But honestly, I actually like when the needle skips, because to me, if somebody's halfway educated, they know what happened. They hear it, they know it. I mean, at least you know what happens when a turntable goes, you know? You can understand that. If somebody's computer glitches and shuts down, the crowd's just staring at them like, what's happening, you know? And then I think it looks kind of bad. So I also think, like, if you are on a laptop, prepare yourself to have a CD stick with you. Have a backup with you. Like, I'm prepared with vinyl and USB. So if anything happens, I could go left, I can go right. I prefer to have all my options in front of me. But if I don't, I'll deal with it. Yeah.
Echoing more concepts we've talked about, you know, being prepared.
Yeah.
It's so important because there is so much unexpected out there.
I mean, put it this way, nothing is gonna be perfect every time you play. And that's, I mean, I thrive off that. Other people can't handle that. Like, a lot of people can't handle the boominess of a really big system. I can't handle the not boominess of a very small system. I need to feel the whole room shaking to lock myself in. I need to feel my legs getting smacked from the subs in the booth. I need to feel that pressure for me to actually lock in. If I don't have it, I can't do it sometimes. Or I can't get to the magic moment. Like, I can play, but I just won't really settle in. And other people, they can't handle that. They get onto a big room and they're like, this is too much. They can't handle the vibration or the echo of the room. And I'm like, no, I love that, you know?
It's more immersive in that way for some people. Yeah, totally. Yeah. What else, you guys? We're gonna close it off here pretty soon with Zach, so that we can respect his time and get back to what we're doing too. So.
Hope it was all right, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
Good luck in the rest of your program, guys.
Yeah. We're gonna have a blast, and a couple more weeks left, and then we got performance day. So
cool.
We're gonna jam out and rock.
Well, good luck, and maybe I'll see you guys out and about somewhere when I'm in town.
Yeah, awesome.
Info@slamacademy.com.